Welcome to this presentation on stress and how it affects both body and mind. Over the next slides, we'll unpack the science behind stress, the patterns that perpetuate it, and practical ways to recover. Think of this as a holistic tour: physiology, cognition, sleep, eating behaviors, cardiovascular risk, burnout, and resilience strategies, so you can see how everything connects. This slide contrasts acute and chronic stress to clarify why short-lived stress can be helpful while prolonged stress becomes harmful. Acute stress is adaptive, boosts performance briefly, and resolves, whereas chronic stress lingers for weeks or months, keeps the body in high alert, exhausts recovery systems, and raises the risk for long-term disease development. Here the diagram traces how the amygdala triggers adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream, producing immediate increases in heart rate, blood pressure, and glucose for quick energy. When these spikes repeat, receptors become desensitized and recovery is postponed, gradually shifting cardiovascular and metabolic balance towards strain and long-term imbalance rather than short-term readiness. Chronic cortisol production has a twofold impact on immunity. It suppresses normal immune responses, lowering white blood cell activity and slowing wound healing, while also promoting systemic inflammation. That combination can lead to slower infection recovery, more autoimmune flares, and a tendency for allergies to worsen over time, underlining how stress reshapes immune defenses. Sustained cortisol exposure affects brain structure and function, particularly the hippocampus, where dendrites can shrink. Functionally, this shows up as impaired short-term memory, reduced learning efficiency, slower cognitive processing, and less accurate recall effects, commonly noticed in students and professionals under pressure, that often normalize after adequate recovery periods. This slide maps a vicious cycle where a hyperactive amygdala makes minor events feel threatening, triggering worry, rumination, and sleep disturbances that exhaust emotional resources. As prefrontal control weakens, regulation becomes harder, maintaining the cycle of reactivity. In short, ongoing worry and poor sleep amplify stress sensitivity and undermine cognitive control. Evening rumination and elevated evening cortisol can delay REM onset, fragment deep sleep, and shorten total rest, which leads to next-day fatigue, sugar cravings, and irritability. Those daytime symptoms feed more stress and perpetuate the cycle, ultimately increasing long-term cardiometabolic risk by preventing the restorative sleep needed for recovery. The emotional eating cycle shows how stress hormones amplify reward center responses, driving overconsumption of high-fat, high-sugar foods. That behavior elevates visceral fat, insulin resistance, and cholesterol, increasing physical strain and guilt, which then fuels further emotional eating and creates a reinforcing loop that compounds both metabolic and emotional load. Psychosocial stress, especially chronic job strain, contributes directly to cardiovascular risk through repeated blood pressure spikes, endothelial damage, and plaque instability. Meta-analyses link high psychosocial stress with about a 23% increase in coronary event risk. The key takeaway is that psychosocial stress is an independent yet modifiable cardiovascular risk factor. The World Health Organization defines burnout as an occupational phenomenon characterized by emotional exhaustion, cynicism, or depersonalization toward work, and reduced professional efficacy. This framing highlights that unmanaged workplace pressure is a systemic risk requiring both organizational changes and individual strategies to protect mental health and maintain performance. Practical resilience techniques include box breathing to regulate the autonomic response, short daily mindfulness sessions to lower heart rate variability and cortisol, and scheduled micro breaks to retrain nervous system set points. With consistent practice, these habits improve overall resilience, reduce physiological stress load, and help prevent the cumulative damage that leads to long-term health issues. Connection is a powerful healing force. Social contact and shared activities trigger oxytocin release, which blunts cortisol responses, improves mood, and even speeds wound healing. Prioritizing empathy, time together, and mutual support turns solitary threat into a shared challenge, making stress more manageable and strengthening both emotional and physical recovery pathways.